Hi everyone, in Algebra 2B, this is going to be your new material, going over the new material in lesson 97. And this lesson is going to seem pretty familiar because we've already done substitution before, but now we're going to be working with advanced substitution. And what that means is basically it's just going to be a little bit more tricky to solve for. So we're going to go through the example problems and then we're going to move on and do some of the new problems from the lesson. So what you're going to do first is you're going to look at both of your equations and we are going to have to solve for one of those letters. So you have to do substitution, you cannot do elimination. What I'm going to start by doing is I'm going to start by solving this equation right here for x. So if I solve this equation for x, I'm going to move everything that contains a y to the other side. So I get negative 2y minus 3. Then I'm going to divide everything by x. Or by 3. And that would give me x is equal to negative 2/3 y minus 1. And now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it into my second equation. And that's going to be by substitution. So it would be 4, and then in parentheses it would be negative 2/3 minus 1. Sorry, negative 2/3 y, and then minus 3y equals 13. So what we could do is we're going to start by distributing, and that would give me negative 8/3 y minus 4 minus 3y equals 13. But so that we don't have to deal with a fraction, we can actually multiply this entire multiply this entire equation by 3. And that's that denominator right there. When we do that, this would multiply by 3, so this would just become negative 8y. So become negative 12. This would be negative 9y equals 39. Now I'm going to move the 12 to the other side by adding it. So I would have negative 17y is equal to 39 plus 12, which would be 51. And then you're going to divide both sides by 17, negative 17. And you'll see that y comes out evenly to become negative 3. Once you've done that, now we can take that value and plug it back into here to solve for x. So x is going to be equal to negative 2/3 times negative 3 minus 1. A negative times a negative is a positive. So that means I'd end up with positive 2. So x would be positive 2 minus 1. So x is equal to 1. So advanced substitution, you still need to solve by substitution like it says in the problem, and you just need to follow that direction. Solve for one of the letters and then substitute it into the second equation. Now we're going to look at the second one. So for this one, if you look at the second equation, you have 2, 4, and 2 as your coefficients. So I am actually going to solve for the second equation. I'm going to solve for x. So that means I'll have 2x equals 4y minus 2. When the 4y goes over, it becomes positive. The 2 would stay negative. Then you're going to divide everything by 2. And that would give me x is equal to 2y minus 1. Well, that's a little bit easier because now we don't have fractions to deal with. So in some cases that is going to work. And then we're going to substitute that in. So that would be 5 times 2y minus 1 minus 3y equals 9. And then we're going to distribute that so that we end up with 10y minus 5 minus 3y equals 9. I'm going to move the 5 to the other side by adding it. And then I have 10y minus 3y, which would be 7y equals 14. So then my y is going to be equal to 2. And then when y is equal to 2, I can plug it in here. So x would be equal to 2 times 2 minus 1. So x would be 4 minus 1, so x would be equal to 3. And that's your result. So now what I want you to do is we are now going to go over a few of your problems. I'm going to go over the new problems from lesson 96 again, as well as from 97. So I want you to pause the video and try number 4, 5, 6, and 7. Once you have done that, you can unpause the video and then we're going to go over those problems together. So for number 4, I'm going to go back to my notes that I have from lesson 96. It says blues vary directly as greens and inversely as whites squared. Okay, so blues varied directly as greens. So I'm going to use this for number 4. I know my blues is what's varying directly, so it's going to be B1 over B2 to represent my blues. And then it says varied directly as green. So directly would be like this. So that would be G1 over G2. But then it says inversely as white squared. So then I'm going to have to use this equation here, inversely. So this would be W2 and then W1. But then don't forget that it did say squared. So you want to square both of those variables. So the W's are going to be squared. So I used my notes in the last lesson to solve. Now I'm going to start plugging in the information that I know. It says that there are 4 blues, 2 whites, and 3 greens. So initially, there are 4 blues, so B1 is 4, 2 whites and 3 greens, so G1 is 3. And then there were 2 whites, so W1 would be 2, but don't forget you have to square that because it's white squared. And then it said how many greens were required, so G2, when there were 2 blues and 4 whites. So 2 blues and then 4 whites, and again, don't forget to square that. So now when we cross multiply, I have 4 times 4. X is equal to 3 times 16 times 2, and then we're going to divide this by 4 times 4, which is 16. Which means that X is going to be equal to 3 times 2, which is 6. So that would mean that there would be 6 greens. Okay, and that concludes your number 4. Now we're going to move on to number 5. Again, this is going to be a similar problem to the last one, meaning that we're going to use these formulas from the last lesson as well. So it says cheers vary jointly. Cheers. So the cheers is what's varying. So for number 5, I'm going to do C1 over C2. It says it varies jointly as the number of fans and the square of the jubilation factor. Well, varies jointly means we're going to use this equation. It's very jointly to the fans and the square of the jubilation factor. So fans and jubilation factor, but don't forget you have to square that. And then it would be over F2, J2 squared. Okay, so that was all from lesson 96. Now I'm going to go and start inputting my variables. So it says there are 100 fans, the jubilation factor was 4, and there are 1,000 cheers. Okay, so 1,000 cheers would be my initial. And then my fans would be 100. And then my jubilation factor is 4. But don't forget that you have to square the jubilation factor. So it would be 4 squared. Then it says how many cheers were there when there were only 10 fans and the jubilation factor was 10. So we're solving for the cheers. There are 10 fans and the jubilation factor was 20. And don't forget to square that jubilation factor. Now you're going to cross multiply. So I know 4 squared is 16, so that would be 16 times 100. X is equal to 1,000 times 10 times 400, because 20 squared is 400. And then we're going to divide by, so you know that 16 times 100 would be 1,600. So now in your calculators, you just have to plug in, so it would be 1,000 times 10 times 400, and that's all going to be divided by 1,600. And that gives us a result of the shears. It would be 2,500 shears. And that is your result for number 5. Now remember, those number 4 and 5 were both reviewed from lesson 96. Now we're gonna do the new problems from lesson 97. So I want you to try this on your own if you haven't done so already before you actually do it with me. So for this first one, you need to solve for one of the variables. But if you look at this bottom equation, all 3 of those coefficients are divisible by 3. So I'm actually gonna solve for x. So 3x would be equal to 3y plus 12. Divide everything by 3. And I get x is equal to y plus 4. Now I can take that and plug it into my equation over here. Remember that you have to use substitution, not elimination. So you have to use substitution. I know that elimination would have been easy because you can just eliminate the y's, but they do want you to use substitution on this one. So pay attention to what it's asking you to do. You're going to distribute your 2. So you have 2y plus 8 plus 3y equals -7. So if I move the 8 to the other side, add the y's, I get 5y equals -15. Divide by 5. And I get y is equal to -3. But you're not done yet. So you need to take that -3 and plug it into this equation here. So we have -3 plus 4. So x is equal to 1. In the answer key, they are going to write these as ordered pairs. So that would be 1, comma, -3 would be your answer. And then moving on to number 7. So if I look at this equation here, I'm going to solve for either x or y. It doesn't matter which one you decide to solve for. I'm going to solve for x in the top equation. So that would give me 4x equals 2y plus 8. I'm going to divide everything by 4. So that I get x is equal to 1/2 y plus 2. And we have to do substitution. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug it into my bottom equation. So that would be 3 times 1/2 y plus 2 minus 2y equals -4. If I distribute the 3, I'm going to get 3 over 2 y plus 6 minus 2y equals -4. But just like on that practice problem, you do want to get rid of the fraction, and you do that by multiplying it by the denominator, and in that case it would be 2. So multiply that fraction by 2. This would just become 3y plus 12 minus 4y equals -8. If I move the 12 to the other side by subtracting it and add the y's, I would get -y is equal to -20. So therefore, y is going to be equal to 20. Now I'm going to take that and plug it back into here. So that would be x is equal to 1/2 times 20 plus 2. 2 goes into 20 10 times. 10 plus 2 is 12. So your answer would be 12, comma 20, because x would be 12, y would be 20. And that is your answer. And that concludes your new material from lesson 97. Under this lesson is where you're going to place all of your questions for lesson 97, part 1. Hope you all have a great day. Bye.